Rain fell steadily over the small coastal barangay that night, drumming against rusted tin roofs and turning narrow dirt paths into shallow streams. Inside one of the oldest houses stood Mang Jose, already in his mid-60s, listening to the familiar sound of water seeping through cracks he could no longer afford to fix. Life had grown quiet since his wife passed away years earlier. His only son worked overseas and called when time allowed. Days blurred into routines of survival, solitude, and memory. That evening felt no different until a faint knock broke through the rain. It wasn't loud or confident, but hesitant, almost apologetic. Mang Jose hesitated before standing, joints stiff, heart uncertain. When he opened the door, 4 soaked figures stood trembling in the storm. They were young, frightened, and clearly exhausted. The eldest spoke first, voice shaking as she asked for shelter, just for the night. Mang Jose didn't yet know their names, their pain, or how deeply this moment would reshape his remaining years. The 4 siblings stood silently as Mang Jose ushered them inside, water dripping onto the worn wooden floor. Under dim light, their story unfolded in fragments between tears and long pauses. Their parents had died suddenly in a bus accident only days earlier. Relatives existed, but none were willing to take responsibility. The 2 oldest were legally adults, but financially powerless. The younger 2 were still minors with nowhere to go. They had knocked on several doors already and heard the same answer every time. The eldest promised they would leave by morning, insisting they needed only a dry place to rest. Mang Jose looked around his tiny home, painfully aware of its limits. 1 room, 1 thin mat, 1 blanket, barely enough food for himself. His pension barely covered daily survival. Logic told him to refuse. Experience told him the world was already cruel enough. He remembered hunger, loss, and being turned away himself. Without announcing a decision, he handed them towels, gave up his only blanket, and watched them sleep on the floor. He remained awake, wrestling with fear and compassion. Morning arrived quietly, light slipping through gaps in the walls. The children stirred, embarrassed by the burden they felt they had become. They thanked Mang Jose repeatedly and prepared to leave as promised. He surprised himself by asking them to stay. Not for a day, not for a week, but for as long as they needed. What began as a single night turned into something permanent. The house filled with voices, movement, and emotion. Silence was replaced by laughter, arguments, and shared meals that stretched thin. Mang Jose adjusted quickly, waking before dawn to find work wherever he could. He repaired fences, hauled sacks at the market, cleaned yards, and sold snacks on street corners. His body grew more tired with each passing month, but his resolve never weakened. The children noticed everything. They saw how he skipped meals, how his shoes wore thin, how pain medicine replaced rest. They called him Lolo, not out of politeness, but because that's what he had become. A grandfather by choice, not blood. Each child carried dreams that refused to die despite their circumstances. The eldest, Maria, studied education, determined to finish college even if it meant reading by candlelight. Carlos returned to his technical course after dropping out, encouraged by Mang Jose's quiet insistence that quitting would cost him more than hardship ever could. Miguel focused on mathematics and engineering, believing knowledge might lift all of them someday. The youngest, Ana, became the heart of the household. Money remained painfully scarce. There were days Mang Jose pretended he had already eaten. Nights came when he ignored pain, so the children wouldn't worry. Neighbors whispered that he was being used. They said the children would abandon him once they succeeded. Mang Jose never argued. He measured wealth differently. To him, the house was rich with purpose again. Family, he learned, was built not through obligation but sacrifice freely given. Years passed, marked not by ease but by steady progress. Maria graduated and became a teacher, earning modest wages but contributing everything she could. Carlos finished his training and found work as a mechanic. Miguel advanced through school with relentless discipline. Anna excelled academically, quietly dreaming of becoming a nurse. Still, expenses multiplied. Medical costs rose as Mang Jose aged. Repairs were postponed. School fees arrived relentlessly. Yet no one complained. When opportunities arose, Mang Jose insisted the children take them, even when it meant distance. Maria accepted a better teaching position in Manila. Carlos left for overseas work in the Middle East. Miguel secured employment with an engineering firm. Each farewell was heavy, but Mang Jose smiled through tears. When Anna received a nursing scholarship far from home, she cried hardest of all. He held her hands and promised he would be fine. What he did not say was how quiet the house would become again. The years that followed were slow and quiet. The children sent money faithfully, more than enough to improve Mang Jose's living conditions. He refused to spend it. He saved every peso, convinced it might be needed for them someday. The house aged alongside him. Leaks worsened. Walls cracked. Floors creaked. His eyesight dimmed, and his strength faded. He continued working when he could, stubbornly independent. Calls from the children came less frequently, not from neglect, but from busy lives filled with responsibilities. Mang Jose understood. Love, he believed, meant letting people grow beyond you. At 80 years old, his body finally gave in. A neighbor found him unable to rise from bed. Doctors diagnosed severe malnutrition and exhaustion. The truth shocked everyone. The hospital contacted the only number listed. Within a day, all 4 children returned home. They stood around his bed, stunned by how small and fragile he looked. Tears fell freely as realization settled in. He apologized for worrying them. They asked why he suffered alone, why he never used the money they set. Mang Jose answered simply. He believed their futures mattered more than his comfort. The doctors prescribed rest, proper nutrition, and constant care. The children made a collective decision. None of them would leave again. They took turns caring for him, feeding him, sitting beside his bed. Slowly, strength returned, but their plans extended beyond recovery. One morning they asked him to trust them and placed a blindfold over his eyes. When the blindfold was removed, he struggled to understand what he was seeing. A solid, newly built house stood where an empty lot once was. The children explained they had saved every peso he sent them. They built the house together for him, not as repayment, but as gratitude. Mang Jose wept openly, insisting he didn't deserve such generosity. Life settled into something Mang Jose never imagined possible. Mornings were shared. Evenings were loud again. The children arranged schedules to ensure someone was always with him. Mang Jose often sat quietly, watching them move through the space he once struggled to provide. He understood then that every painful choice he made had planted something lasting. The house became known not for its structure, but for its story. Mang Jose's health continued to stabilize, though age remained undeniable. He believed family was defined by commitment, not biology. His house, once silent, became a gathering place for neighbors. Time softened the sharpest memories, but never erased them. Mang Jose, once afraid of being a burden, now understood his life had meaning far beyond survival. As the years continued, Mang Jose's strength waned gently, without fear. On evenings when the rain returned, Mang Jose would sit near the window, listening. The children never called him a savior. They called him father. Mang Jose's story is not about charity or reward. It is about what happens when compassion is chosen without expectation. Love, once given freely, always finds its way back.